Frenzy Podcast.
Hey friends, this is Nick from the Nerd Frenzy Podcast, and today we are talking about Venom. And we have our wonderful, beautiful, and talented Andy George, everyone. How's it going, buddy?
It's going good. That's a very good Venom voice. Very good Venom voice.
And speaking of which, my friend Tom Hardy did the voice of Venom.
Yes, we'll get into that because it fits part of Tom Hardy's contractual obligation to do funny voices for all of his characters now.
Cool.
And he really got a twofer because I would say the second funniest voice he does is Eddie Brock himself. So
Trying to be that American guy, yeah. He's kind of like, he's always like all spacey, like, It's like, are you making fun of us?
So I really appreciate your Venom voice. Can I hear a little bit more of this Venom voice?
Okay, I'm gonna try, but we'll see how it is.
I'm
Eddie.
going to try a Venom voice.
Eddie.
We'll see.
Go ahead, my friend.
You gotta say the line. You gotta say like, bones. I'm gonna laugh. Pancreas, beans, tasty, or whatever it is. Like, but yeah, I think that's the good line. Is the hello, Eddie.
I know, and you can totally tell it's him because if you watch any movie he's ever in, he always has this weird accent that he delivers with it, and you hear it like when he does Bane, when he's like, oh yeah, sure. He kind of does that all the time, and you can hear it even when he's like, oh well, you need to understand, girlfriend, that this is the way I has to be. And I was like, dude, there you are. That's you talking.
We'll get into with Tom Hardy as like the center of this film, and the only reason this film is even highly or beginning to be entertaining like it is, because it's really. I was watching it again. I'd only seen it once back when it came out on, like, not even in the theaters, but in rental. Watched it once, I think, on an airplane, so not the most like engaged viewing experience. But then coming back into it when I watched it just again for this. Highly entertaining. I mean, that's just the lens that it is in now, seeing Tom Hardy is having fun. It's almost like an art house film where it's like just a lot of creative choices in a row with a big budget. We will get into that. I wanted to ask you, Nicholas, first off, too long of an intro. Thank you for having me back.
Of course.
And for dealing with my low quality audio issues as we talked about Spider-Man in circles, I think. I think all of us ever needed to be said was said.
I know, there's really nothing more. I was thinking, like, I was actually very, because there's a lot of times I'll do a whole podcast and I've missed like 40% of what I want to talk about. But with you, you're like, all right, Nick, we got this and this and this. So I was like, okay, you're my structure for that. So thank you, man.
No worries. It was a lot to cover. So, we're bite-sized chunks for this one. This wasn't even an idea of mine. I never thought I would like this movie or actually have this much fun thinking about this movie. But as we're talking about Spider-Man, you got to talk about Venom.
Oh, yeah.
Because, especially when you look at the history of all the movies they were trying to do, Venom was always like, people were jonesing for Venom. And I wanted to ask, are you a Venom fan? Were you like a super 90s, I got to get me that poster, I think he's so fucking rad, that t-shirt that was everywhere?
Yes.
He was the bad boy.
Oh, he was. And anything, I found out that it was done by a guy like for $200 and he sold his idea. But
Yes.
the reason why I like this character is because, as you know, I read Spider-Man all through my life, and I wanted a lot of characters, Vulture and whatnot. They're great characters, but I always wanted something just very like almost alien, and that's what we get. And I remember when I was a kid, you'd see those like those disgusting, the tongue sticking out and everything. I remember thinking, this guy is scary. He was pretty much the bully version of Spider-Man. So yeah, I loved it. What about you, man?
I guess I kind of didn't have a reaction. It was like this in the 90s in comics. As you know me, I'm a big Silver Age DC comic lover, which means that I love my superheroes in tights. My Superman, it has red trunks and a spit curl. My Supergirl is always in a like cheerleading skirt. Like, modernizing has to happen, and I'm totally fine with it. You're asking where my heart was as a comic book person. It's the Silver Age, and it was just because it's campy, cheesy, and so sci-fi. And then, of course, Venom is the 90s. Like him, Cable, Spawn, all of those Wildstorm characters are
Dark
just
emo
like
kind of, yeah.
yep. Those characters that define that era of comic book art, and of course, you know what that all has in common is one Mr. Todd Mcfarlane,
Mm-hmm.
who at this time was on the Spider-Man books, kicking ass on Spider-Man books, really making them awesome, introducing like the knit webbing and the really dark lines and the super sharp, like almost creepy features. Like it was primo Todd.
Oh yeah. Of
And
course.
Venom got a little bit of that Todd touch, which is understand the popularity because the design is out of this park perfect.
Oh
In its
yes.
simplicity,
Oh
in
yes.
its fierceness. It's so scary.
Mm.
It's always scary, and you can make it scarier. Like looking up pictures of Venom and all the different ways it's been drawn. It's terrifying. People
Oh,
go to
yeah.
town
Oh, yeah.
with it.
Well, the idea behind it
course-
is terrible because first of all, any
Yeah.
parasite, that's attached to you, it's a very, you know, unsettling feeling. And when you have this thing, who for most it's like, oh, I'm going to attach to you, and then I'm going to suck all the pretty much essence out of you, and then maybe bite your head off because I want some brain or whatnot because I love brain and chocolate. But maybe I might kind of just bond with you, and it might be this kind of like we can kind of go off each other's emo and have some fun. And luckily, Venom's that case, but the movie's a little bit different than the comics a little bit, but I like both the characters. I like both of them.
Absolutely. And actually, I was surprised. There actually is a lot more comic book ties, like straight up, than I gave it credit for, including some characters I thought were original to the movie, which weren't. Once again, this was an era of comic books I didn't really have. When at this age, I was probably like, what, preteen? And so
Right.
my access to comic books was old comic books that you would find, like, in the bundles and garage sales and stuff. New stuff wasn't necessarily at my fingertips. So this whole era passed me. The origin, the popularity, and we'll get into Carnage and all the extra symbiotes because Venom just spun off like hotcakes and
Oh yeah.
so much more of the symbiote stuff, which leads me to exactly what you were saying. The mythology that comes packed in with Venom from the start is pretty damn brilliant because it's very layered. It can expand in a lot of ways, but for this one, essentially an origin story, it's an alien monster movie,
Mhm.
and you can go to town on it, and it can only go from there, which is pretty cool. So I guess I like Venom more now than I used to, especially after this movie where I kind of see, the anti-hero doesn't always work, but in this new age where we figured out things like Deadpool, and we're okay with bad characters being heroes, this was, it was more fun than it deserved to be. So, Venom Kids, I mean, when my timeline here, in terms of, as we like to talk about, how do these things even like become into the movies? Why did people want Venom so bad? 90s were huge. The Spider-Man movies were coming out, and Sam Raimi was being accused of having too much of a 60s classic focus because he was using very old school characters like the Stan Lee ones. And A.B. Arad, if you're familiar with that name, big producer for Marvel for years, with good projects and bad projects, but his name's on everything, really pushed for Venom in number 3.
Of course, because I know that he wanted to do Vulture for his main villain, and I'm okay with that because Vulture is a very intelligent villain, and of course the producers, and this is what you find out about a lot of movies. The producers are like, no, even though we don't know anything in terms of how to make a quality movie, we're going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. It's like, oh, guys, and that's why Spider-Man 3 was what it was.
Figures.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. And pretty much it sounds like George Lucas is the only person that can do action figures and then somewhat of decent movies at the same time, but no one else can do that.
It takes a mountain man, and it was just, I think, everything suffered for it, right? So Spider-Man 3 infamously has too much going on.
Oh yeah.
Venom, for being an alien, just kind of shows up really nonchalantly, and people deal with it just fine.
Almost cool, like, what's up? And then people are like whenever his woman's like, is that what I just thought it was? Like, oh yeah, that's that parasite. And then she's like, okay. And I'm like, okay. I guess it's like, I wish it was that simple. Hey, Andy, I don't know if you knew this, but I saw an alien yesterday. But anyways, how was your coffee this morning?
Hey Nick, yeah, like the suit? It's alive. It's a sentient suit that I found yesterday, and I'm just wearing around like ever. I'm cool. So I'm evil now. You tell everybody!
Absolutely.
And then, well,
Absolutely.
in Spider-Man 3 also has my favorite thing where you take it to just the scientist, right? Because Kurt Connors just is the scientist of everything. And this dumbass just has it like in a jar in his lab. Like, if you have an alien goop, you know? Especially in this day and age, we're not even like touching doorknobs without sanitizing our hands. You just have a goop in a jar in your lab from another planet, and you're like, wow, look at it move. Weird.
But of course, they're going to copy the whole alien method and just say, "Hey, it's something that we can use as a weapon." Like, well, of course, I know, and we all know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. It happens with every single movie, and we're okay with that because we know that it's going to be a fun little story because of it. So,
And the amount of stuff, we're actually now moving into the movie of Venom, how much stuff they steal from Alien and a lot of horror movies, like the jump scares of just the splatter on glass and just the tentaculiness of all of the goop. Rip-offs of everything, from The Thing, from Alien to any sort of weird creature movie.
mhm.
But that's kind of perfect for this, that it's just real scoopy, scary goop. Moves around and all of a sudden claws things around. And they've done a good job in both Spider-Man 3 and in this movie of making it look very gross.
Oh, you and I have talked about Spider-Man 3's how it was like on Topher Grace, it was like attaching to him, and it's almost like no, no, please, no. And it was like he like was raping the host almost, and the host was like, "Please stop," and he was like, "No, I will not." And it was very disturbing.
Terrifying.
Yes, it was. It's like, and like I said, there's
Yeah.
there's nothing more disgusting than someone touching you when you don't want to be touched in any kind of capacity. So, of course, that's taken to the extreme level, but the extreme level that we have to watch, and we're like, this is a Spider-Man movie, but I kind of want to just put a pillow over my face right now.
Absolutely. And that's what Venom really is good about leading into, is it is a horror movie.
Hmm.
It's a lot of body horror. The apex, the crux of the movie is people being submitted to the symbiotes against their will.
Hmm.
And that, I think, that tone, that approach to it as just this own separate scary ass thing is all the gravity the Spider-Man 3 should have been, when it's like, holy crap, there's moving goop
Definitely.
and it takes people over. So let's talk about how Venom starts, because it is in a super scary lab. I'm sorry, it starts with a shuttle crashing, which I really appreciated because they name dropped Captain Jameson.
Oh, of course, they had to
And
throw
they,
that little
like,
Easter egg in there.
Yeah. It really goes to show, I think this script benefited from somebody who wasn't a comic book fan, literally going to the origins, compressing it to screen, and then letting Tom Hardy fill in the rest.
Hmm.
Because it actually accurately does, like, the first 3 Venom appearances worth of big notes. The shuttle crashing with Captain Jameson, Carlton Strand, and Anne Whaling, the girlfriend of the villain, I thought were just made up characters. They're actually from these storylines, and peppered in and out. The comic book version of Anne Whaling has a very depressing, and so we're not going to talk about that.
So
But you
90s,
will see it
like,
again.
yeah.
Oh, just everybody was having a tough time in the 90s.
Nirvana
Everybody got
was,
some
I mean, we all. That was when we went through our like kind of like a weird rebellious revamped version of the '60s, where we're like, but instead of us being like, hey, there's a war, we're like, hey, life is depressing. Like, okay.
Well, it was infamously known as the grim and gritty era,
Yeah,
right? We
yeah.
wanted everything to be gross. We wanted everybody to have lots of guns. Batman, this is also infamously when we killed Superman, broke Batman. I think we just made Wonder Woman a biker chick of some sort. She was like, had a whole thing that wasn't nearly as memorable, but our whole thing was we wanted to be more like Spawn. We wanted to be more like Wolverine.
Hmm.
We wanted to be more like Venom. But I think, that all came with a price, because not everybody can be an anti-hero. Not everybody can be a jerk and have these stories still have weight. And we grew out of that. But this movie starts off with Tom Hardy being such a scumbag jerk. Like,
Well,
from the
yeah,
start.
because whenever you find a guy, like, because there's nothing wrong with his whole desire of trying to find the truth. Like, he was a good reporter, and he's like that reporter that's like, hey, there's corruption going on, and I will find it. So he's a good man, but then the way he kind of just flipped off his woman, it just pretty much saying like, hey, don't dig anymore because you'll get me in trouble. And he's like, okay, and then as she walks away, he's already doing it. I'm like, you're a piece of shit, man.
Okay, not girlfriend, fiance.
Yeah, that's right.
It
He
starts
just
off with them about to be fucking married.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then when he goes back to her later, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Just not too long ago we were getting married." And I'm sitting there going, "Well, dude, you completely screwed her after she told you, like, hey, man, don't screw me." And you still did because you're a piece of shit. But it's okay because it was all in the name of truth, right?
No. Do you know how, like, she could have been disbarred because of that?
I know.
So going back to one of the conversations we had
Or
about
killed.
Spider-Man. Yeah. Oh, absolutely, right? The San Francisco Mafia. Which is, kind of scary.
Yeah. Seriously.
We'll get into their representation of San Francisco in a minute, because it's ludicrously funny.
I know. You wanted to bring that up, yeah.
They make it seem like it's the Bronx, but it's not.
Yeah, I know. I've been in San Francisco enough to know that it's definitely a little more light and happy than what they were trying to throw out.
We don't have bodegas in San Francisco like that guy goes to all the time.
Right.
But anyway, when we were talking about Spider-Man, one of my big beefs was how the poor women of Spider-Man always get shafted so hard. And, so hard. Once again, you have a movie with a quality actress, Michelle Williams,
Yes.
with a terrible Emma Lawyer, Take Me Seriously wig and pantsuit skirt combo. She just looks like a high school. It looks like a kid's version of a librarian's costume for Halloween.
It's like Billy Madison's woman. That's how she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like sexy. Somebody said sexy Velma or something like that.
Which I'm okay with that too.
Put her in regular clothes. I see lawyers wear plenty of regular clothes, but she's just like over fat, and also like maybe too Gwen Stacy-ish. With the bangs and like the 60s haircut. I don't know what we're trying to do, but from the get go, the very first scene, Tom Hardy is sleeping in her bed, in her dank ass apartment, and she's waking him up with coffee, and he looks just tore up. He spent all night drinking malt liquor downstairs with the Chinese guys on the street, and basically she leaves, and he hangs out in her house and just like bums around. Then later on, when he steals from the computer, it's only because he's still crashing at her house.
Oh, I know.
And just like helps himself to the laptop when he hears it go off. What the fuck, dude? Like, slow your roll.
I know.
I've never touched my significant other's computer. Is exactly that. Plus, I don't care.
Oh.
Hey, hun, your computer's going. It's fine. She'll get it.
And they were trying to throw the audience, like, they were trying to say, hey, audience, what he did was a scumbag thing, but like I said, he was trying to do it in the name of truth. And I'm thinking, the audience is smarter than that, and you kind of just made him feel stupid by doing that. But maybe just a way to get them to the next stage in the movie. That's why he did it.
It's an interesting dynamic for Eddie Brock, because it is kind of a trope in Hollywood of, I'm right, therefore I can do whatever actions necessary in the name of being right.
Right.
However, you do some really heinous things with no consideration, yet you're still heroic or, on some sort of hero's journey, even though you're like torching the earth as you go.
Right, yeah. And it's like paving the road to hell on good intentions is what he's doing.
Yeah. So actually, the first cheer out loud moment when I rewatched this movie came when, after all that goes down, so if you're following it home, he is trying to expose the big awful corporation. He knows that there's some sort of bad thing going on. She has proof, the lawyer girlfriend has the proof that there is something going on because of this lawsuit that he just completely yanks from his computer, which I also don't think you can report on documents that you steal. I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Not a journalism major. Any fan out there who is, please chime in. Oh yes, he gets in trouble. She gets the moment when she dumps him, kicks him out. I was really proud of her, and I was really stoked that it wasn't one of those things where they were like going to make it work. She's like, straight up, get out of here, creepo, and treats him appropriately with disgust every time she sees him for the rest of the movie.
Not the way that you typically see a movie where they're like, "Oh, I'm mad at you, but I'm not mad at you. I secretly still love you." And she was like, she moved on. She found that nice doctor guy, and by the way,
very nice doctor guy.
Yeah, and they do that sometimes, but not very often. Where they actually have like the new guy going, "Oh, you're kind of a hero yourself. You're not like this dingle hopper. We want to hate you. No, you're a surgeon, and not only a surgeon, you're a guy who saw that Tom needed help. So Eddie needed help. So you actually were like, hey, I need to help you because you need help."
I do also appreciate that. That's a nice trend. I also, much like Eddie, the husband in the Ant-Man movies, who the stepdad that's really buddy with Scott Lang.
Yes.
I do appreciate seeing mixed families getting along positively, because these movies are seen by families, and it's a good role model. So,
Yeah.
and also just these dynamics here. I don't know. I think it's more played for comedy because it frustrates Michelle Williams that her new boyfriend starts like guy crushing on Eddie Brock and like is all about him. But we digress. So Eddie Brock, at some point, investigating the labs. Also, Jenny Slate in this movie is just a really interesting choice.
Yeah, I
For a
was
character
curious
that could have
myself.
been- yeah, she could have been better. She could have done. I mean, Jenny Slate's great, but the character just doesn't do anything but be scared and then die.
She just throwing exposition to the audience so we can, like I said, go to the next. And her role is to say, "Hey, there's a problem, Eddie. You need to come over here," just so Eddie could get the symbiote. But other than that, she wasn't really, part of anything. Just kind of there, just trying to a good bystander, pretty much. But I mean, she was all right. Like, but I love her and stuff like Big Mouth and whatnot. But I've never really seen her try anything with like real range yet. So I guess we could see what she does in the future.
Well, and it would have been, I think, kind of fun to see her with a symbiote of some sort in like that first act, like kind of like, because they're pretty cool about. I mean, once again, it's goop up until it's like. I mean, even when they are full Venom, it's still very hard to track who's who. 'Cause It's all goop. But it would have been cool that if in any one of those scenes, maybe she was kind of a random Venom. Of course, like breaks out, and it's all another horror moment. But there's plenty of people like freaking out and scaring and jumping at glass and being
Yeah,
insane.
yeah,
Like the homeless friend just goes bonkers is one of the saddest parts of the movie to me.
yeah. There were a couple of parts that to me felt a little slow and stuff. But I think what carried this movie easily was what Tom Hardy, the actor, had to go through to play Eddie Brock, the character, in which I'm sure you probably wrote some stuff down because you find out from doing just a little bit of research that Tom Hardy had to, like, he always had an earpiece in his ear, and so he would film the Venom voice and then he'd put it in his ear, and then every time Venom would start talking, he would react to it, and I'm thinking this is what it's all about, folks.
Yeah, I think he really came into it thinking I'm going to play two characters, to commit to two characters, and to react to yourself. That's just he's when he becomes Venom. After Eddie becomes Venom, it is nothing but Tom Hardy with big old squirrel eyes, sweating profusely, and make little one-liners and a lot of body performance. Because if you were to ever watch it without the effects, right, he's just jerking himself around. Because everything just like comes in and out of it. It's a very physical role.
He's having a stroke is what's happening, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what works. Otherwise, the effects are very, let's say, simple. And as I was kind of commenting to you when I was texting, is like it's the Team 1000 as your hero, because he only does the full Venom suit a handful of times, but that's also good for effect. It's an origin movie. The very first reveal where the teeth infamously like all come around his face for the first time, very good.
Oh yeah.
Trailer shot 100% because it's the way the visuals this movie makes once again plays to the design, but also to like how the split face stuff works and how like just the mouth opens up. Modern effects have made that so much as engaging as it should be because that design deserves all the creepy tweaks. The really long tongue has to be long and gross. It could I think it was a rubber tongue for Topher Grace at some point. It's just like a Gene Simmons tongue wagging out there.
Gene Simmons, yeah, Gene Simmons would be long enough. They don't have to do any CGI for Gene Simmons, yeah.
Yeah, because there's a problem with Topher Grace's Venom costume where it was obviously a helmet and then a bodysuit and animated sometimes. This is they didn't try. It's a big hulking weird thing.
Yeah.
And they made a very interesting choice when you see Venom for the first time that he does not have a spider symbol, because of course Spider-Man isn't here, but he has these weird white veins that are vaguely looking like spiders.
Right,
So that was
right.
pretty creative. I
Yeah,
thought.
because the one thing that is really cool if you ever read the backstory of any of Venom or any symbiote is they attach to their host that kind of has very similarities that they have. So they'll do things that kind of match like how they feel about things, and and Venom, I guess, on his own planet is considered to be like one of he's a rebel because he's one of the only people who actually care about trying to make a connection, while the other ones just want to pretty much just use them, suck all the essence out of them after they use them, and then on to the next place. But Venom, oddly enough, even though he's a bad guy, he also is a guy who's kind of he's like the Optimus Prime on his planet. which was it's an odd way of looking at it.
I see it as Venom is just a young guy looking for love, and he feels out of place on his own planet. Everyone's saying, "Man, go with the flow. Tell everything you're fine. We're symbiotes." It's like, man, there's gotta be more to this. I just want someone to hold. I just want someone to hold on to forever. I mean, he's still a villain, still a parasitic alien, but you know,
Villains
it's
these
also
a bit of love too, yeah.
yeah. It's also one of these things in movies where it's always when an alien encounters the humans, human nature, something special about humans is what makes this alien be like, oh, I like you. I like you really a lot. Let's see what this goes. It's like, no, aliens would be so not interested in Eddie Brock of all people.
No, he's kind of a, well, especially in this one, because in the comics they kind of changed his character a little bit, just like they did with Andrew Garfield's in Amazing Spider-Man. They kind of made him cool and like rebellious, different, not different in the term like in the original where he's kind of just a prick to Peter Parker. He's actually a guy who's trying to save the world, but he's an egotistical piece of shit too. And I thought, well, this is different, Eddie Brock. But of course, when you say the word Tom Hardy, you're thinking, well, I mean, I'll watch whatever Eddie Brock you want to throw out there.
Well, and you have to do a lot of creative pivoting. You're going to do it without any mention or contact with Spider-Man, right? Because so much of Eddie Brock's character was, like you said, a mutual hatred of Peter Parker with him and the symbiote. The whole rivalry with Peter Parker introduces Eddie Brock as we knew him for like the whole first three stages. So how do you do it just without any of that and have it be interesting? And it's having Tom Hardy crawl into a lobster tank and take a bite out of one at a restaurant.
Well, he's profusely sweating, yeah.
Which I had read behind the scenes was improvised, and I absolutely believe it, and it just strengthens our case that this movie was a Tom Hardy art film.
Well, you can see it. Like, there's times whenever he's just talking and he's kind of just saying weird, random things at times, and you're like, that looked like that was improvised, definitely, because, like, when the director hires someone like Tom Hardy, this guy is very much a character actor. So they're probably just like, hey, man, I mean, you probably, I'm guessing he was probably, 12, 13 years old or 15 years old whenever the Venom was created. So he's probably thinking like this would be the perfect role for me, and I'm gonna be crazy and possibly win an Oscar, whatever Tom Hardy was thinking. But
in this day and age, post Joker, who knows, right? Like,
yeah,
we really, and I do like that. I give this the credit for it. It's a movie that really shouldn't exist, right? Because it doesn't exist in any of the big universes. It's not necessarily gonna go anywhere. There is a sequel out, which we'll talk about, but we don't really necessarily know what Venom's up to all the time. Like the Marvel universe, the DC universe are like continually feeding us stuff. It should be that way. Let's just kind of be surprised, and maybe not have to make everything a giant spectacle and weave everything in meticulously.
they're
I'm
probably
afraid
gonna
of
do
the-
that, Andy. Yeah, they're gonna do that. You know they are, because what's probably gonna happen at the very end of this movie, after he kills Carnage or whatever, is it's probably gonna say something about Peter Parker. It's like, hey, I gotta go see about this piece of shit who screwed me on the other day or whatever. They're probably gonna weave it into because that's what they've been doing lately for the last 10 years. So yeah, I think you're SOL on that, my friend.
You are right, because all these rumors about Spider-Man, the new one being about a multiverse,
Yeah.
I wouldn't. But can they? I guess Disney can afford anybody. It's like, are you going to really pay for the 4 to 5 minutes of Tom Hardy just for one movie?
Seriously. But that would be a wise decision. At the same time, would you want to see Joaquin Phoenix's Joker fighting Batman later on? Because I don't think that it was designed for that reason either. I think it was just kind of like this is an afterthought for you to think about. Like, oh, that's kind of something to think about. But but what they're doing these days is they're not leaving anything up for thought anymore. It's all about like, oh, we're going to show it to you because we know that we'll make a lot of money if we do. So it's like, oh, okay. I mean, you got me there, but as long as it's quality, Andy, I will take anything. Like, if everything's Game of Thrones quality, then we're good. We're good.
Do you think that means less head chomping and like full on eating human beings in the sequels?
Well, that's something we talked about the other day too. It didn't feel very rated R, and I know they're like they can't really just start eating heads off because it's anti-hero, but at the same time you're kind of doing disservice to the person, because like you have people like Todd McFarlane who created Spawn, and created all these very intricate, dark, demonic characters, and then you're not going to give his vision any love, which is what we all grew up, and reason why we still like Venom to this day, because he's a big old scary brute who might eat your head. So,
Hmm. And if it weren't for the moments of levity in this movie, it would probably be too dark and scary for the modern audience. Because it really is a funny movie in ways. I know every horror movie usually has some comedy moments in there because you just have to have beats. But there's like laugh out lol moments, like back to back to back, long between scary stuff. And then the finale of the movie, when we actually get into so the villain of the movie, let's take a pause there. What did you think of this villain and Riz Ahmed in general? I forgot he was the villain until the very end when I saw him explode. Like, oh, that's right. Okay.
well, I like him, by the way. He's great. So when I heard he was going to be the guy, I was very excited. But they did the thing that they usually do with these kind of movies where they just have bigger, faster, stronger, and there needs to be substance in there. And that's why, like when we're gonna have Riot, and he's gonna be 2 times bigger than Venom. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Oh, they're gonna say that the typical, oh, he's so much stronger than me, but we'll see what we can do, kind of thing. And I'm like, well, that's been done time and time again, and that's why Carnage is much more interesting because he's not this big old thing. He's kind of slim and almost like bird-like looking, like pretty much like they made Venom look like in Spider-Man 3. That's kind of how the Carnage should have looked, but red. And of course, you have the very underrated Woody Harrelson playing the part. I'm thinking Natural Born Killers. I'm thinking this slow and steady psychopath that is also like could just bite your neck at any time. I'm thinking this could be, if rated R, they do it perfectly in the right kind of way. This could be epic.
It could very well be your Oscar movie you were just hoping for. Because Woody Harrelson don't get no flips. He does do crazy very well. Then you got Tom Hardy. Gosh, I didn't realize just like it really is a Clash of the Titans, and I'm pretty sure. Do you want to bet that Michelle Williams is going to make it out alive or not?
She won't, because what's going to happen is Cletus will definitely get her, and that's gonna, because he's gonna piss Venom off, and that's what's going to happen. And they know that they can't do anything with her because they already had her in the suit, and it was kind of a cute little thing. But pretty much they had her just being like the variable in the movie, and they don't need her. Just like they didn't need Deadpool's woman either, which that was heartbreaking for me.
Well, and it's really tough because as an origin, it's such a weird trend though, isn't it? And that's great you bring up Deadpool 1 and 2 because Deadpool very much shares a lot of, or Venom owes Deadpool for its success because Deadpool really opened the waters and floodgates for people liking these kind of darker twists. You know, taking a mature audience on an actual adult adventure, which we hadn't really seen these come out yet. I really like that we're getting there. I think I'm really curious to see if Deadpool 3 will they'll allow him to make fun of the MCU, like just go there. I wonder if Disney will let that happen. You can't really make fun of X-Men movies anymore because they're gone.
Yeah,
So,
Disney's sadly, one thing I've noticed about Disney is they kind of are a bunch of squares. And even Fox, out of all the mistakes they've made with certain properties, like they did screw up Alien 3, and after that all this stuff, and a couple Star Wars movies. Fox, at least every once in a while, could, they would create shows like Family Guy and Simpsons that would literally say like, oh, fuck you, Fox, and then Fox would keep on making episodes with them. So obviously Fox at least was in on some of it, but Disney seems like they're a bunch of squares, and they're just like, oh, you can't do that, but we're secretly going to be doing all this bullshit, but you can't do that. That's supposed to be Mickey Mouse, by the way.
I thought that was just Venom on helium.
Venom on helium would probably sound like I do right now.
Yeah. It is one of my favorite parts so going back to when you were talking about how Raya is super fucking plain. Agreed. One of the worst parts of this movie is the super gobbledygook ending where they're fighting on the launch pad. First off, glad that there's no world-ending threat. It's not like something giant, city crumbling. It's a really cool action piece on the taking off rocket pad, and it's just two guys going at it. Then when certain parts, it's just gobbledygook on gobbledygook, right? And it reminded me of that old GAC stuff that used to get the Nickelodeon GAC. If you ever threw GAC together, right? Like, oh no, hey, can't go.
You see it start forming, and then all of a sudden it's this one color. You're like, oh, I want two colors.
And of course, I'm watching in a dark room. the TV is like half black screen. Like you can't really tell what the hell's going
I
on.
know they do that in movies these days, which is weird because back in the day, they would only do that whenever they're trying to hide something. Now it's like, no, we're trying to hide this because I don't know, maybe the graphics were bad, but
It's because there's nothing but graphics, my friend. That whole thing is so animated. The other culprit of this that really breaks my heart is the big finale in Black Panther, which I love Black Panther up until his and Killmonger's fight scene when they're both in Black Panther suits.
okay, I would say the
And it's
first one's good.
literally, yeah. No, the live action one is
Yeah,
best.
yeah, when they're fighting
But
each
it's like,
other, like when they're just wearing their stuff, it's like, oh, this is a good fight scene. Yeah,
and then when they're in the end, you just can't tell who's who. It's happening so fast. Everything's blurry. They're black silhouettes on black background, and just like this, it's just a dang trick. You just go for it, and you don't really get a lot from it. And it kind of sucks because it's a really cheesy action sequence when it should have been more of like a horror movie ending, right? There should have been like a smaller face off with a lot less of the just rumbling and tumbling. But of course, you can't do that. But
well,
it does lead to a very cool
they should
villain
have done
death.
that though. I mean, because Venom is that would have been the perfect movie to do that because Venom is all about having that like shitty ending where it's like, hey, guess what? Not rainbows and butterflies. Because the way they put this out there was like Venom and Tom Hardy were like bros. And even though I thought that was funny and refreshing and stuff, it still wasn't. I was still kind of somewhat like to see like this whole resistance of like, oh, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. But it is also nice to see kind of like a certain like handshaking, like let's do this, together kind of thing. That's also like very empowering. But I would have loved to seen the whole like this guy is a parasite still, but they became best friends, high fives, and like, hey man, after this we should get some burgers. What do you think about that? Yeah, hell yeah. I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, dude, Venom, like I said, Venom just kind of is vibing on Eddie, right? He's letting it happen. It's his first human.
Well, we all
You
vibe.
know,
Actually, funny enough, a lot of people don't know this. Deadpool was actually the first subject.
of Venom.
Yes. It,
What is this?
so I guess they were fighting. This was during Secret Wars, and they were on Battle Planet, and Deadpool was there. I forget what the reason was, but he was there, and I guess when Venom got to him, it was not a cohesive match, and it was like, what the fuck? What this guy's weird, and then so Venom left Deadpool. It was like, oh, and then Spider-Man did that thing that I think brought what was it? Because he was also there too. And accidentally he helped bring it back, and then that's whenever Eddie Brock was able to get a hold of it. Eventually, of course. So
That's right. Because he does Venom's first real love was a young, nubile Peter Parker. And I always appreciated that when Venom was apart from Peter Parker, Peter was always in his underpants. I'm like, don't wear anything underneath the symbiote, dude.
well, luckily the symbiote was only 10,000 years old, and Peter Parker was only like 15 years old, so it's not that much of an age difference.
The symbiote's probably still up in there, right? It's like,
Well,
he's
he's
seen you naked, Peter.
because the cool thing about symbiotes is on their planet they actually will reproduce asexually. So like I guess Venom was the 998th person, and whenever they do the thing where they have babies or seeds or whatever, and then one of those seeds was Carnage, and I didn't know that until I was looking up some comic book stuff, and I'm like, there seems to be some really cool stuff in here that the movie. I mean, of course, the movie can't really throw it all out there, but they discuss about their planet a little bit, but they don't discuss like their god Noel, which pretty much Noel, which I'm sure you heard about him, but he was just pretty much like God himself who was just trying to take over all these things. So he found this. He was just pretty much like he could put power into stuff, and kind of did what they did in the Prometheus movies, where he pretty much found this stuff and he mixed it with like goo, and then he's like, oh, I create the symbiote now, and then he would do it with the animals and stuff there, and then I guess he just got pissed off because creation happened, and he's like, well, I'm gonna go destroy creation, so I'm gonna get all these symbiotes and then just do it, and I guess they got pretty far, but if you look at the Marvel timeline, it doesn't really talk about it much, but I guess they have a lot of interesting history in their planet.
Well, and absolutely, and as that whole reproduction thing you're talking about, in the 20 years that Venom and Carnage have been around, on Wikipedia, if you want to treat yourself, there's like 30 more that they invented since then. And they'll have names like, I wrote some down. One is named Phage, and Toxin, and Mania. And it just keeps going and going.
Lash. Oh yeah.
It gets to an anti-Venom, which I like. Okay, sure. We're
Anti
just doing it whatever we want now.
Anti-Venom is actually funny enough still Eddie Brock. That's whenever he goes and does this thing and he gets like mixed with a couple other symbiotes, and then after a while, Eddie Venom they do this like weird thing where they become guardians of the galaxy and they become.
Honestly, Marvel's so weird. Man.
I know it's like people are going. So we have the symbiotes. Just do whatever, man. Just magic gypsies or fly over there and they grant the wishes to these people. You know, let's just do that. Okay, cool. Okay, and there's Marvel for you.
And would his name be Anti-Venom, or wouldn't his name be Antidote?
Antidote.
Or is it or maybe Anti-Don't call him Anti-Venom, because that's just a weird name. But anyway, in my research of Venom, I found just it has gone in all sorts of crazy ways, and he's never not been popular. I think that's another big lesson I learned. Is he always shows up at least 2 or 3 times a year. He's had like multiple series. He's been the symbiote thing has kind of run its course in a bunch of weird ways in the comics, including having multiple hosts. So in the comics, Anne Whaling did become She-Venom for a short bit, and I thought that was pretty interesting. That it almost reminded me in the movie The Mask, where one of the fun things is like, who else is going to wear the mask?
Oh, because they're going to have different personality for each of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And at this point, I think by maybe a third of the way through, you're like, hey, you know what? Let's see a She-Venom. Let's take the thing for a full walk around and see what it's going to look like on everybody. He did it on a dog. They have it on a dog?
Yeah, they have a little like Chihuahua-looking dog, kind of. Like, yeah. But it never really showed much of the dog. It just kind of shows like you just get into the next host, like with the little girl, same thing. Little girls trying to get to the what's the guy's name? Oz, the Middle Eastern guy, the Riot, the guy who played Riot.
Yeah. Oh, Riz Ahmed.
Yeah, Drake. Yeah, eventually that little girl walks up to him because I guess it's like the same thing with Eddie Brock where they kind of just feel like oh, there's something about this person that I feel the same way, and then I guess they must have found Drake because they realized this guy is kind of a psychopath. He kind of wants to, in terms of like purifying this earth, they kind of want to, because he wants to get all the symbiotes on us, and then we all want to go out to outer space, and he thinks that's the only way we're going to survive. And I'm like, oh gosh, with that kind of method, you're going to cause a lot of people getting pissed off here. Like, so of course, that's that guy needs to be stopped, and sadly, they didn't do a very good job of it. But whatever.
Well, the symbiotes are still going to come, right? Like, it's just the introduction to this crazy, kooky species, and by the Venom surviving, he himself is going to make more of them, right? It's going to be almost like it's like Gremlins, right? Is it because he takes a shower with Venom?
Right, yeah. Because water is the opposite of fire, so fire hurts him, and water makes him, like multiply. Yeah, and then you have to sing the Twinkle Twinkle song to him too. If you don't do that, it doesn't work at all.
Oh my god! What another? And they did have their moments where they try to make Venom cute, like you mentioned earlier about he has to eat chocolate. He, there's all this bargaining with Venom that you can't eat this, you can't eat that.
Like, but why? Come on, man. And then when he's trying, like, hey, that girl's pretty, you should go, you should keep on trying, or you should say sorry to her, like he never did. And I'm thinking, okay, Venom just gave him advice to apologize the right way because he never did, because he's an egotistical bastard. And I'm thinking, wow, Venom, you sweetheart, we just need to put a little bow tie on top of you and just like, little hearts and little glowing red cheeks.
Who knew Venom was going to have such good romantic advice?
I know, seriously. Like, I guess, after, entering people's bodies without their permission, he probably starts realizing a couple of things.
Yeah, I know. That's such a weird way to put it, but yes.
Yeah.
Who also pops up and gives unsolicited romantic advice? Stan the Man Lee.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Which makes zero sense, because he did not create Venom.
No, not even close. He's about 30 years earlier than that, yeah.
This entire movie is a practice in snipping out the creation that you did have. No mention of him at all. It would have been hilarious if Stan Lee was wearing a Spider-Man shirt or something, and you'd be like, oh, nope, never mind.
Yeah, and of course, it's one of those things. They're like, hey, we need to get Stan the Man, but you're absolutely right. Not only was it not his thing, it wasn't even his property. Like, it was Sony. It wasn't even Marvel. It wasn't even Disney. It was like oh, we don't even own this thing. Like technically, Stan, you fake own us, but you don't own us. It's just I guess an ironic kind of oddity, but of course, I'm not going to say no to Stan the Man.
Well, and it's also just like almost like in Mallrats. He shows up to give love advice. He says something along the lines of "Don't give up on each other." And going back to San Francisco, you and I have spent time with that city. If an old man just gives you advice on the street, you ignore him. Like you just keep walking. You're not talking to any stranger on, especially an old man just standing on the corner. Old people run away from people that look like Tom Hardy in San Francisco. Like,
Yeah, because he kind of has, like, in all of his movies, he has a certain intensity that I can't necessarily understand. Like, I remember the only movie that I didn't really see that intensity was This Means War, and that was because it was a stupid romantic comedy. But for the most part, he always has this, like, gruff on him. And of course, when they say it's going to be Venom, I'm thinking, okay, well, that sounds perfect because I can see it. I can see it. But, and plus, I don't want to see Topher Grace do it again.
well, they almost did. They tried to make a Venom movie as early as Spider-Man 3,
Oh,
which
I
is,
did
of
not.
course, going back to, if we recall, Spider-Man 2 was blockbuster. And so they were going in high and mighty, all things go for Spider-Man 3. They're thinking, we're gonna do Spider-Man 3, then we're gonna do Venom, then we're gonna do Craven, then we're gonna do like 5 Vulture movies, then we're gonna go crazy. And then Spider-Man 3 bombed and everything changed. And then when they picked the mojo back up with Amazing Spider-Man, which did okay, and then number 2 was once again we're gonna do real big, we're gonna introduce a lot. They really thought by Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 3, they do Venom as well with a whole new thing with all their Sinister Six and stuff. They did not. Then it really just sat around until it became cheap enough, really, to produce, is what it became.
Mm.
Special effects got cheap enough. The talent wanted to do it versus taking the payday. And the director, I guess, is the guy from Zombieland,
Hmm.
which I'm not too
Probably why
familiar
he
with.
put Woody Harrelson in there.
Mhm. But kudos to him. It is the right mix of horror, comedy, action, and just, it's a pulpy comic book movie
Hmm.
that doesn't take anything away from how good the performances are or how good it looks in certain times. Like, it was a fun movie in a way that sometimes everything feels overproduced. Though this was pretty familiar, like there's a lot of very similar beats of a monster movie. You kind of know where, and also for it's like a monster movie, superhero movie, came in like this because everybody had to end up the same place, and they kind of like went like that, right? Because at some point you can't just have him eating people, and I think this is the problem with the character like Venom is he's cool because he's really scary,
Hmm.
but the more you get to know him and the more he becomes humanistic or even has characteristics, that initial fear fades off and then it becomes cartoonish. And then all of a sudden
Yes,
it's
yes.
not cool anymore. It's imagine if I think it's happened with the Predators. The Predators now like talk too much. But imagine like the aliens, the xenomorphs, having voices. Like Ninja Turtle
Well, they
style
they
voices and
did they did
personality.
Aliens Resurrection whenever somehow Sigourney Weaver produced that half alien, half human, and
Oh, that was
and
like
and it's
dripping
going.
in milk. That was
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the grossest
and yeah, it was like, oh, you're actually talking, and I remember thinking like, I don't understand what they're doing there, but yeah, that sadly
thing.
did happen.
Nikki just triggered something. I forgot how gross that thing was in that movie. It's just wet and slimy and has that weird nose
And look, nothing
and
like Sigourney
nipples.
Weaver.
It's supposed to, right?
I don't
It's
know
supposed to
what
be
they were
like some
trying
sort
to
of.
accomplish. I don't know if they were trying to imply that she had sex with the queen. I don't get it because she was half of it, half xenomorph and half human, but somehow they mated and then they created this. And she's like, "Oh, my son, my baby." I'm like, I don't get it. Like, does that mean they came out of your vagina? What's happening right now? I don't know. I don't know. I talk about like disturbing. I'm thinking about an alien coming out of Sigourney Weaver's vagina.
Well, and Sigourney plays it like a champ too. Sigourney is in the Tom Hardy school of make it work, where this ridiculous stuff with a quality actor.
Right,
Like,
right.
sell me more of this milky alien dripping
Oh
all over
man,
this ship.
and Venom, it could have been easy to screw it up. And even though I don't consider this movie, like a 10 out of 10, I would consider it was a 7.5 out of 10. And the movie entertained me throughout the whole time. There were some hacky slashy things that Tom Hardy did that were kind of like odd, but kind of refreshing. And then Michelle Williams, said, like you said, she's a brilliant actor, and they didn't really have much for her to do. And it's like that for the villains were all just bigger, faster, scarier version, but not really like intelligent. Which The second one should have that because Woody Harrelson's a brilliant actor, and if they do it correctly, the second one could be more of a like an intellectual monster movie.
It won't though. You know, it's just gonna be bigger and weirder.
Yeah,
And
well, I want it to be like a cat and mouse, like ooh, like Connor just setting little traps up, and Venom. I want it to be like I'm smarter than you. You're just a big old dumb ape, and I'm actually like a brilliant psychopath. But yeah, you're right. They won't. They'll just probably have Woody Harrelson say some really silly things and be over the top, which is a bummer because he could be over the top in like in a very convincing way, but they'll probably have him over the top like. Like hey guys, like oh no, don't do that.
well, and you have to remember these people have been giving us some of the best voices and impressions for the last decade. I mean, the Bane voice lives well on. I think the Venom voice is catching on. Who knows what the Carnage voice might be something incredibly weird and TikTok viral before you know it.
Is Carnage gonna be smoking marijuana while he's talking to him? Like,
oh, I bet he's gonna be wearing real pants or those weird pajama pants that Woody Harrelson always wears.
Oh,
well, I forgot who else looked it up, but there's some other people joining that cast. Like, if these things can stay under the radar, I would like Venom to stay its own thing, but
okay.
they might ruin it on their own accord. Right? This one might just superhero movies like this tend to have a problem with number two. Because number one is an origin story is a pretty well-oiled machine at certain beats. Like Guardians of the Galaxy is a good example of the first one is so good because it's essentially a build your team movie. You know, the whole first 2/3 is getting the team together, and the whole last act is what is the team going to do.
Yeah,
the whole first two acts write themselves because you have to get everybody together. In an origin story, you have to have a girl, some sort of personal trauma, aka a girlfriend, not either die or break up with you. Preferably not die. They usually do.
Yeah, mom and dad does too.
Oh yeah, everybody bites it.
Yeah, you can't be a superhero unless you have a depressing life, which is a bummer because I don't have a depressing life, so I guess I can't be a superhero.
Well, and in this one, he lost his poor homeless friend, who was the crazy lady he would chit chat with outside the fake bodega.
Oh, you mean the two times we saw her? Thanks, guys. That was really a well lit actor there too. I like her, Melora Walters. She's hilarious in Pin 15, and she's just a couple like I guess she's kind of one of those B actors that you see in like movies with like Kiefer Sutherland, but she's always great. When I saw her, she's always has like this like spark, and when they kind of had her like, oh, we like her too, so let's have her just play the homeless person, and then 5 minutes later we see her like, get me out of here, and he's like, is that you? Is that you right there? And of course Tom Hardy, he's literally saying it like, is that you? What are you even doing in there right now? And I'm like, okay, Tom, can you stop, please? Can you get her out because she's freaking out and it's obvious, but you're like, oh, I don't get it.
You're absolutely right. He gets so goonish sometimes when he's like confused, like what? Unlike Spider-Man 3, there is an appropriate amount of freaking out about the aliens. At some point, Tom Hardy is really just like, huh. And then I think the one thing that I think is lazy or weird is, so I guess, does Venom become the clothing of the person he's wearing? Or does he, like, come through the clothing? Because you watch the action sequences, I'm specifically thinking about when they were fighting all the guys in his apartment, and his sweatshirt and jeans are basically like one comes from the back, one comes from the front. It just seems like lazy effects, but like, is that part of the suit? Like, is Venom living in the skin, coming through the clothes and venoming, or is he like the suit?
Well, I'd imagine that it has something to do because, like you said a minute ago with Spider-Man, they actually took the symbol because what happens is the parasite and the host, if they have a really good bond, the parasite will do whatever he can or she can to make sure that the host gets all the good stuff they want. So that's why he put the Spider-Man thing, I think, and it was just kind of like an evolution thing. So I think maybe Eddie Brock has a specific solid bodybuilder type, and I think was why Venom kind of has that type as well.
Now, I'm talking about the clothing specifically. So do you think that Venom became a gross hoodie and pants?
Oh, that's what you mean. Oh, I'm sorry. I just gave you this intricate answer that was not even close to what
absolutely.
you were
When he becomes his real form, he's a big bulky monster.
Right.
But when he's not, like to bring it up, when Spider-Man takes the symbiote off, he's in his underpants because he always just ended up in his underpants after he fought Venom for some reason.
Oh, because
But
Venom's just
then,
going and sucking that stuff up and just breathing in those fumes. It's like, ooh, that's a
yeah,
16-year-old boy right there.
well, Venom was the clothing, and so if Tom Hardy has like Venom going everywhere, that means that like his jeans and his shirt are Venom too.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's kind of like in a weird way, kind of all. Yeah,
Oh,
interesting way of looking at it, Andy.
well, and then going back to the fact that Peter Parker wore underpants, do you think Venom like ever got up in there, and that's why he had to wear the underpants? It's like, okay, you can totally surround my entire body, but not here.
Oh, you
That's like
think
my
you think Venom, who's
no
kind of
zone.
yeah? I don't know because I think that if you're gonna pretty much force yourself into someone's mouth and stuff, you're probably not gonna be very gentle with their vagina and their penis either.
That is true. That is true. I forgot that the symbiotes go in right into their mouth, and that's always really gross. Like, ugh.
I know, like I said, it's just like they're forcing themselves upon someone, and they once they get inside, they're like, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" I'm like, "Well, no, I'm kind of mad at you right now. You just penetrated me."
'Cause that is a big difference because in the other versions of it, it is just a suit, like the symbiote wraps around them.
Hmm.
In this one, the symbiote seems to like be absorbed by them,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Something like that, man. I don't know. There's a couple things that I'm trying to find similarities between the comics and the movies, and I know they did a couple different things, but it's confusing a little bit because I know that the symbiotes like they're parasites. They do their thing. They go to a host. If the host is not good, then they're like, oh, I don't like this host. I'm gonna kill them. They go to another one. They sometimes try to like transform around them, but it's confusing. They
Well, it goes back to my other big annoyance with things like this. Iron Man's nanites that now just like form around him, and Black Panther has basically everybody has morphers, and things just like appear around them, and it's the laziest shit I've seen in these movies. Because essentially, these actors are not really in these costumes. Nobody has to actually wear these godforsaken things.
which is good.
And so, when the actors do have to be seen in their face, they're always wearing plain clothes. The lazy way out is like, oh, my costume just forms around me. But explain it. Is Venom your underpants or not? Is he up in there? Is he like? Can you just like venomize yourself a different suit every day and never have to worry about it again?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Does Venom like turn into a little ball and you have to carry him in your pocket when you have to be like Venom activate?
Well, I guess Carnage was able to, in one of the issues, able to go through a telephone wire and was able to be like this big as a material to be able to do it. So, I mean, yeah, it probably is just sitting there up the butt, just sitting there, just hanging out and staying warm. That's right. Every time he farts, he goes, "Ooh, Brock, you had too much pizza and not enough brains." Whatever.
So this leads me to a couple questions for you, Nick.
Okay.
One, if you had a symbiote, what would your symbiote name be?
Oh, it sadly it's always going to be something related to Star Wars, so it'd probably be like.
Oh, come on.
I,
No,
I,
it can't be because it has to be like a poison or a feeling or
okay,
some sort of
I
like
got one. I got
one
one.
thing.
This is easy
Okay, what you
because
got?
I use this for my World of Warcraft account all the time. Pathogens, which is a parasite that enters through your bloodstream.
That is, dude, you need to sell that to Marvel for $200.
Oh, it's whenever you see it, like when they have pathogens, which is funny because Cletus, aka Carnage, the reason why he's such a badass bonding is because he actually did go through his blood. So it was different because usually they don't do that because I guess Eddie Brock would say no to like that whole like you can be with me, but I will not let you like be with me like in my blood. And I guess Cletus being crazy was like, yeah, do whatever the hell you want. Go ahead. But yeah, pathogens. What about you, my friend?
Well, going along the name of Carnage and thinking about my symbiote would probably, if he's really going to bring out the worst in me, that's just a louder, meaner, drunken, crazier, good time guy. So I think my name would be Shenanigans.
Okay. Could you imagine, the Venom and Carnage and Shenanigans? Yeah.
I'm the guy that's just like, hey, what's up? Knock over that glass.
I'm just here to watch. I'm just here to hang out. I'm not here.
Was not invited, and I brought dogs.
Yeah, you would actually like you would have probably just stayed in the dog the whole time and it's like, no, I'm fine where I'm at because this is this is my style.
Yeah. All right.
Shenanigans.
So, number two question for you: which Tom Hardy villain? I wanted you to do a make love to Mary Kill with my three favorite Tom Hardy characters:
Okay, I like it.
Venom, Bane, Shinzon from Star Trek Nemesis.
Okay. And sadly, I do know exactly what you're talking about. And I say sadly.
Make love, Mary Kill with those three, my friend.
Okay, well, I will say Mary Bain because I found what he was very sweet with Raja Ghul's daughter. He was very like how he's pretty much her servant, so he's a sweetheart. Kill Venom because he was always sweaty, and I'm not about that. If I want myself a man, I need my man to be clean. You know what I'm saying? And Tom Hardy's not a clean guy. He's one of those guys that he takes a shower once every month. And what was the third one you said?
Creator Shinzon.
Yeah, there you go. So marry him, even though he was an awful leader and sadly one of my least favorite villains in any Star Trek movie. So, sorry Tom, but you sucked.
Oh, but if you go back to the Tom Hardy repertoire, and this is what made me want to go watch Nemesis, which I have mixed feelings on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the beginning of Tom Hardy really doing fun voices because he's trying to be Patrick Stewart.
Yes, he's being a younger version of Patrick Stewart. You're right. Yep, that's right.
And just like it's so funny now in retrospect. But yes, so mine would have to be you marry Shinzon because the protection of the Romulan Empire, and also he's essentially Jean-Luc Picard. So you know where you're headed. It's going to be sexy bald guy for life.
Whenever I think of anything Picard wise, I always think of Contact with the Borgs. What an awesome thing that was, by the way. Borgs.
Yeah.
Alice, what Cringe? Is that her name? Alice Cringe. She was the main. She's badass. She was scary villain. Scary.
Uh, Going back to a lot of these genre things when they take horror on and they take in villains that are scary, that are, and once again body horror like the Borg is and these parasites are and the symbiotes, to be out of control of your body and to have like something when you have something like especially an alien influence, an unknown influence taking over, you really need to play that up. And I think by the time you get to the end of Venom, one thing that kind of sucks is you've really just kind of set all the ground rules and everything's like too plain again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, well, Venom does do this. He can't do that. And Riot is gone because he exploded over here. And everyone's going to be fine and go about your business.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and well, that's a problem with most villains. Like we've talked about this many times before, but most villains in movies are garbage because they're one dimensional. They have one reason why they're doing something because they're evil. I'm like, well, no. But then you have people like Magneto, who's like, well, I'm not evil. I'm trying to fix the world, and because of that, people are gonna die. That kind of complexity is what you want in any villain, and that's why people like. Uh, what was the main villain's name in Venom?
Riot
Thank
and
you.
slash Carlton Drake, which is such a plain name.
Carlton
Villain to
Drake.
be. It's very rich sounding, isn't it? And that just shows you that another big thing in the '90s was corporate villains, greed. Lots of people who care more about money and their own wants. Basically, Lex Luthor copycats all over the place.
And Lex Luthor has some wonderful poetic drama with himself too, but typically he also might get brought in the whole game of just being sometimes just a stupid villain. But gosh, sometimes when they do him correctly, they do him damn correctly. But like I said, as long as they do Carnage where he's like almost like it's like a chess game to him, but they won't do that. They already made the movie, and they're probably just gonna have him be just a little more flamboyant with his behavior, which I want that too because Woody Harrelson can do that, but. Make the villain interesting, please. Make him interesting, and make Venom with Eddie Brock. Make something happen where there's some tension there too. Don't just have them be bro the whole time, and they need to be like, there needs to be some shit going on where like, hey, I was looking over at Deadpool and he's looking pretty tasty right now too. Can I go try him out? No, you can't. You're mine. Like, get back inside me.
Well, standard fare could very well be that they will be separated for a period of time, and then they have to rediscover each other.
It's usually a sequel thing they do, yeah.
Absolutely. There's always a risk that I might lean too heavy on the comedy, right? Like people liked this one a lot for the jokes. Next one might just be dumb,
Well, that's why
silly.
the trailer that starts off with him trying to get food and he's squishing ketchup and
Yeah,
everything. Like, oh, so they already did it, man. Yeah, they're already
it's
showing us
probably
that.
gonna be it's probably gonna be a lot of that, but also less of that, if you know what I mean. You know, like it's not gonna be as inspired. It might just be a little too. I want to say repetitive, but it's only going to go so far unless they really can push it a little bit further. And that's why I'm excited to see more of how they make Carnage look different. Because if they can make it a scarier and not a just complete copycat but red of Venom, that'd be nice. But it looks like it's just a copycat of Venom that's red.
Yeah, and like I said, if they can do some kind of way where they're like, hey, this is a scary character, so let's have an element to where like Venom is in this big old building and he's looking for Carnage and he knows Carnage is somewhere close and he's looking and he's like, where are you? And just kind of like that whole idea is like, oh, you have that stomach ache and you're like, oh gosh, where are you, Carnage? And you can maybe hear him in like 5 floors up, and that's kind of stuff that makes like Jurassic Park scary and stuff. Is this element of like, oh, I don't know where. That's what made Alien, which they're trying to replicate Alien, obviously. So if you want to replicate
Mm-hmm.
Alien and do it correctly and have, oh, because you see in the original Alien, you see the alien for 3 minutes altogether, but it doesn't matter because you saw how the characters were interacting with that, and that's what was beautiful about the movie. Not that it was anything else special, but just because it was just like felt like a real, like almost documentary about people that actually had to deal with a stupid alien.
Would you call that his Venom sense?
Yeah, sure.
You know what is or wouldn't have hurt them is he didn't really shoot webs, did he? He shot strands of his hands a lot.
Hmm.
But if he would like just to swing from tower to tower, would that be too much? Too much Spider-Man for a non-Spider? Like, how close could they get
Yeah,
to
they got to be careful with that
a non
because
Spider-Man without it?
like I said, like once you mix Spider-Man with Venom, that makes sense to be doing that kind of stuff and have some kind of organic, constant material. But to be doing it now, they need to be careful unless they want to have it like being like you said, like part of like his skin or something weird. Like when Hugh Jackman had the bone instead of the adamantium. So I mean,
Hmm.
they got to just be careful. Andy Serkis is directing this one, and I hope that helps it.
That's right.
You know.
Oh, just blew my mind. I forgot about that. It's gonna be terrible. Have you seen that Jungle Book movie? Oh no, have you
Yeah, I saw it.
seen that Jungle Book movie he did? It's just garbage. He's like
Yeah.
not. He's not good at. Oh no. Oh no. I love Andy Serkis, but
Yeah, he's
he's
great
so
as a
young.
motion cap guy. He for all you don't know, he was Golem, of course, which he was in a suit and he was always with them. And people should know him from the Planet of the Apes movies and King Kong. He's brilliant with that. But as a director, well, you know what? He did help Peter Jackson direct the Hobbit movies.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they weren't that good. So maybe it doesn't matter.
and everybody deserves a chance. I think that's coming out soon.
Not at
Anyway.
Venom though. Maybe he could write a love story, but I don't want you to write something that should be Shakespearean, like with these two villain and anti-villain, but you're gonna make it more like, oh, instead of Terminator 2 or Aliens 2, you're gonna make it like Transformers 2, and you piece of shit.
And just waste your time and all our time. And then think you're also aware. So Sony's doing this interesting thing where they're taking Spider-Man characters, but doing non-Spider-Man movies with them. Morbius
Mm,
is the Jared Leto movie where he's the human vampire,
hmm.
already I think in the can, sitting around, farting around. And then out of nowhere this week they talk about Aaron Johnson, I believe his name, the gentleman that played Quicksilver in Avengers, is going to be Craven the Hunter in a standalone
I
movie.
saw that this morning. Yeah.
Craven's a giant who the fuck cares character. Morbius might be interesting.
Jared Leto's
What?
is very. I just find him himself to be very pretentious. So even though I find roles that he's in, like Requiem for a Dream is one of the best movies of all time, but it wasn't because of him. It was because it was damn good movie that just had him in it. But you put him in anything else, I just see like Jared Leto going like, let me get in touch with my God self, and that's and I just see it always. I just see him like, hello, I'm Jared Leto. Like, do you want an autograph? I'm like, no, I just was walking by you. Can you leave me alone?
Well, and we'll see. I think it's going to have to copy a template pretty close to this, where it's going to be science-based horror but with vampires instead of symbiotes, we're probably going to have a pretty off-putting character at the beginning and a very off-putting character at the end.
Oh yeah.
But that's, if they're going to try to go down this route with these anti-characters, and Kraven the Hunter, once again, who cares? The most famous story about Kraven the Hunter, he kills himself at the end. So it's like, what about this character is so endearing to you people?
Yeah, and they're like, okay, all you're trying to do is you're just trying to hunt superheroes and like they're your trophies. You're just a Russian piece of shit. And I remember watching
Yeah.
reading the comics, and then watching the '90s animated. And I remember thinking every time Craven was on there, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just gonna.
Snooze fest, right? You got Doctor Octopus, you got Googles of Goblins, you got all sorts of crazy characters over here. This guy's hunting me with a spear.
Yeah, he is
All sorts of appropriation problems.
wearing Mufasa on his back. I don't care.
So dumb. I did have a Kraven action figure though.
Well, see, then you're part of the problem, Andy.
Dude. I don't know. That's another thing about these movies. Was there Venom toys? Can I get a Tom Hardy action figure right now?
Well, I'm sure because Todd McFarlane is also known for his toy industry too. So I guarantee you, there's got to be a Todd McFarlane action figure out there, for sure. I mean, for sure.
Oh, I bet. Oh, and then there's like slews and slews of statues and figurines if anybody wants them from over the years. But yeah, like, is Venom a kids movie? Like, is this something if we were preteens? I mean, you have preteens in your house. Would they watch Venom and be like, "Cool Venom"?
Well, I sadly watched it with Jack because I'm not a very good parent, and he was 8 at the time. So yeah, I would say that it's okay to show your kids that because I did.
That's why the Nerd Frenzy is the #1 parenting podcast currently on all channels.
31 subscribers, guys. I'm going for 32. And I will not enter you the way that Venom does, just with heart.
At 35, Nick will get a tattoo of anybody's first choice.
That's right. And I'll do it anyways.
Can't say no. We'll both get tattoos for 35,000 subscribers.
I like it.
I think if we're going to maybe have a summary of where this all fits in, I think I'm very interested in what we've seen over the last couple of decades of superhero movies is that audiences are willing to give B characters a chance. Hollywood actors of certain caliber are willing to give these completely untested properties and characters that have like a weird following or a cult following a chance. The creators who have made them so famous and popular are getting diddly squat for royalties. And we're just going to see more of this because it's kind of like between, all the new platforms and all the long form series. It's a big old why not, right? And so I think we're going to have maybe Carnage the series, and we'll see more Venom. We'll maybe even see Toxin or Pathogen in the theaters near you. As long as they kind of at least try to twist things up or switch things up, I'll recommend. Nobody cares.
We all care. All 31 subscribers are like, you know what? I did not see that movie, but since you guys talked about it in such a decent regard, I'll go watch it.
And then it's the Tom Hardy too. You got to do Star Trek Nemesis, Dark Knight Rises, and follow up with Venom.
You don't need to do Nemesis, Andrew. Do Warrior.
What's your third then?
Warrior.
Okay.
Yes, come on. The fact that you didn't say it in the first place, I'm kind of pissed off at you right now. Actually, why are we even doing this podcast still?
Then, of course, any other movie you're going to see a lot more of Tom Hardy and his various physiques over the years. So, enjoy, everybody.
We've seen a little bit of everything with Tom Hardy, haven't we?
Tom Hardy is a gift upon this world, and we should just enjoy it for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Also, thoughts on possibly, the big rumor is Tom Hardy as the new James Bond, but I think he's already too old.
Well, I actually heard that they were doing an African American female James Bond next.
We'll see if that. Well, let's see it. I think what there is the character is going to be in this last movie, but whether or not they're going to go forward with it, I would like to see them have the balls.
Okay. Well, and if they want to do that, like if they want to change the race, I would love to see Idris Elba play James Bond because he is such a handsome, big, wonderful, beautiful physique, and he's very charming, charismatic, and everything he's in. I would love to see Idris Elba play James Bond if they are planning on doing something like that. But I'm not ready necessarily for was it Naomi Campbell? Was she going to be replacing? Was she not Moneypenny? She was another agent, and I think that they were trying to make her. Is that what they were doing? I don't even know.
We're doing lots of twisties and turnies, but
Twisties
we will
and
see.
turnies. Okay, we'll see, everyone.
Anyway, Nick, thank you so much, buddy. This has been fun.
Absolutely. And everyone, the Nerd Frenzy Podcast at gmail.com. If you guys want to see us do little skits or whatnot before or after we do these little fun things, but throw some topics our way. And if you guys have subscribed and you guys are liking this stuff, please do, because I will do whatever for your attention. So subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Andrew, Walter, Mallory, George, I love you, brother, and I can't wait to do our next topic, my friend.
Your friend, take care.
All right, take care, bud.
Bye.
Bye.
The Nerd Frenzy Podcast.